So let's get started working our beaded picot bind off. We're going to be beading as we go, so we're going to use either a beading tool, or I have here just a very slim crochet hook, and we're going to mount a bead onto our hook ready for beading our work. Now I'm working my shawl here that I have actually knitted with 2 strands of Malbrigo silk alpaca held together. So you'll notice that I'm working with 2 strands that make up the loop of my stitch and make up my working yarn. You'll probably be working with just a single strand of yarn, but it doesn't make any difference. We're just going to treat this as a single stitch. So the first thing we're going to do is cast on 1 stitch using the knitted cast on. So I've created this stitch. So we're going to take our crochet hook with our bead already on it, and we're going to go ahead and go into the loop of that stitch and remove it from the needle. So my crochet hook is going through that loop. Using my thumb and finger, I'm going to pinch the stitch to stop it getting any longer, and I'm going to pull tension on the yarn a little bit, and I'm going to hook my yarn into the hook of the crochet hook, and then I'm going to push my bead over the stitch, and I should still be holding the hoop of the stitch on my crochet hook, and the bead should have gone down the strands of the stitch. I'm going to put it back on my needle, and there we've got a bead on our knitting, and I'm actually going to knit this stitch. Then I'm going to knit the next stitch, and then I'm going to bind off a stitch by passing that stitch over, just like a normal bind off. Now you'll see that we've just got 1 stitch now because we cast on a stitch, but we also bound off a stitch. So our stitch count hasn't actually changed at the minute. The next stitches is where we're going to actually start binding off on our edge, and the number of times that we do this will determine how many stitches there are between our beads. For this pattern I want to have 4 stitches between my beads, so I'm going to knit the next stitch and then knit those 2 stitches together through the back loop. Knit the next stitch, knit the 2 together through the back loop. That's 2 stitches bound off. Do it again for a 3rd stitch, and again for a 4th stitch, and then put your stitch back onto your left needle mounted in the proper direction. So now you can see that we've got our bead and a section of bound off knitting. This section is 4 stitches long because we did our knit 2 together through the back loops 4 times, and then I'm ready to add another bead, and we basically repeat the process. So we're going to knitted cast on 1 stitch, so now we've got 2 stitches here. We're going to take our crochet hook, we're going to put on a bead and take that cast on stitch, take the loop, and we're going to bead that stitch and put it back onto our needle. Then we're going to knit that stitch, knit the next stitch, and then bind off a stitch. And now you can see we've gone back to 1 stitch there. So we add 1 and then we bind 1 off. Then we're going to knit the next stitch and knit 2 together through the back loops. And remember, we want to do that 4 times because we want 4 stitches between our beads. If you wanted 5 stitches, then you do it 5 times, 6 stitches 6 times. So you can decide how many times you like to bind off and how many stitches therefore you would like between your beads. Once you've done your bind off, then remember to mount your stitch back onto your left needle, and here you begin to see this little picot bind off. So we're going to have a nice little scalloped edge and a nice stretchy bind off. So I've mounted my stitch back onto my left needle, and then we're simply going to repeat that whole process again. We're going to cast on 1 stitch, we're going to grab a bead with our crochet hook, and we're going to slip the crochet hook into the hoop, pull it off the needle so that we can bead that stitch, and then we're going to put it back on our needle once it's beaded. Then we're going to do exactly the same procedure. We're going to knit 1, knit the next one, and bind a stitch off. Again, we cast 1 on, we bind 1 off. And then again, we're going to knit into the next stitch so that we can do a knit 2 together through the back loops 4 times, and then we will be ready to make our next beaded stitch. And you just continue that all along the length of your shawl. It's a slow process, it's not super quick. You will get into the swing of it because it's not tricky either, but it does produce a lovely little beaded picot edge that then produces a sort of nice little scalloped edge. And for a lace weight shawl, these beads add just a little bit of weight to the edge of the shawl. That's it. Happy knitting!